Hello Year 3, Mr. White here, and welcome to your very own special topic video for Summer Term 2, Week 3. And now we're moving away from looking at plants, and we're going to look at our next topic subject, which is science, and we're going to be looking at plants. And this lesson is all about looking really closely at plants and see if we can accurately record what they look like. So you're going to need some pencils, maybe if you've got them, watercolors or pens or colored pencils or what have you, because you're going to be drawing a really detailed picture of a plant. So first of all, look at this image. Do you know what this is? Do you know what this plant's called? It's actually got two names. Its real name, the name we all call it by, is a dandelion. But all plants also have a really complicated scientific name that you don't really need to know. But just for interest, it's called a Taraxacum officiale, but we would call it a dandelion. Now, look at this picture. It's an illustration, it's not a photograph. Why do you think it represents this dandelion at one moment in time, or is it got aspects of the dandelion from different times in its life cycle? What do you think? Talk to an adult about what you can see here and what about this picture. Why do you think so many different pictures have been included in this one picture? Why do you think the artist has, what do you think the artist has had to do in order to get this picture as accurately as they can? How have they gone about getting this picture so accurate and so detailed? What do you think they've had to do that? And what method, what materials and method do you think they've used to actually draw it? Do you think they've drawn it in pencils or watercolor paints? What do you think they've used? Talk to an adult, pause the screen and tell us what you think. Right, so that picture was actually what's called a botanical illustration. Botanical just means it's about plants and things, and illustration means that it's a drawing or picture. So what do you think, why might an illustration be useful to look at different kinds of plants? And why do you think we had illustrations rather than just taking a photograph of it? Stop the video and talk to someone about that. Right, so botanical illustration is the art of depicting the form, colour and details of plant species. So it's about looking at plants in real detail, and there's one down there as well. Frequently they use watercolour in their paintings, and they must be scientifically accurate. They're often really beautiful and beautifully produced, so they are very, very detailed, scientifically accurate pictures of specific plants. Now, before photography was invented, this was the only way of visually recording many of the species of plant life around. So you couldn't just go and take a photograph of plants and then maybe go back to it a few months later and take another photograph, because photography hadn't been invented. And for a long time, photography wasn't really that accurate, unlike today where you can take really detailed close-up pictures. It's the only way to record different plant species was to draw them and paint them in really detailed manner. And that's why we've got so many of these kinds of illustrations from the past, because it was the way of recording exactly what plant species were about and how they developed, and so they could actually identify them. Now, these were used by physicians, that's mainly doctors, pharmacists, people who work making medicines and things, gardeners, to identify the different plants and classify them so they could talk to each other about the various plants and know what they were talking about. The oldest example, the first example we've seen of a plant like this, drawn for that purpose, was between 50 and 70 AD by a Greek botanist called Pedanius Doskouades. I'm sorry for my Greek pronunciation then. So you imagine this has been going on, this kind of work, for nearly 2,000 years. So that's really, really clever. So it became really popular about 200 years ago in Europe, mainly because Europeans were sailing out to different parts of the world and discovering new places and new parts of the world that they'd never seen before. So they sailed to America and Australia and places like that. Now, you and I know that the people who were already living there had obviously discovered it because they've been living there for thousands of years, but the Europeans came across these new countries, these new places, and these places were filled with completely new different plant species and plant varieties and animals that they'd never seen before. Now, obviously it took them a long time by ship to get there, And whilst they could take some samples back with them and try and grow them in whichever country they came from, they couldn't guarantee that they would grow, and most of the plants would die en route. So what they did was they did these botanical illustrations, and many of the discovery ships that went out to these places had on board scientists and illustrators, people who drew and painted really detailed pictures of the things that they found, which they brought back to show people. And that's why botanical illustration was just so important. So what I want you to do is stop this video and watch this YouTube link video here, because it will tell you all about botanical illustrations. And if you want to look at it further, there's another link so you can really look at this in more detail if you want to. Right, here's another botanical illustration, just to show you another example. And another example. Look at all the way the different seeds are laid out and the different way it works. Now, your first task this week is to draw your own botanical illustration by looking very, very carefully at a plant. Now, it could be a house plant, it could be one from your garden if you're lucky enough to have one, or even a weed such as a dandelion that you go out and find. Maybe if you go to your local park or go to the rec or somewhere like that, you'll be able to find any kind of plant. It doesn't really matter. Then I want you to look at it really, really carefully, examine it really closely, and draw the most detailed, best picture of it you possibly can. So you're drawing a botanical illustration, so it has to be really accurate and only draw what's really there. Right, once you've got it completed, give it a title and put the work on tapestry, and we'd love to see it. So your first task is a drawing task, and I hope you enjoy it. Right, moving on. Plants have different parts, and different parts have different jobs. So the first thing we're going to do is see if we can name the different parts of a plant or flower. So look at this picture underneath, and there are 4 boxes to describe 4 different parts of a flower. I want you to pause this video and talk to an adult, talk to someone, and see if you can name the different bits of the plant. So what would you put in each of these boxes as the name for each part of the plant? Pause the video and have that discussion now. Right, welcome back, and hopefully your answers are like this. Let's go through the answers together. So the first one, the top bit, the really colourful one, is called the flower. The next bit is the leaves. These green flat things are the leaves. The tall, strong bit is called a stem. And the bit underneath the ground, the bit that goes down, are called the roots. So how did you get on with that? Now, each of these has a specific job. So if we start with the roots actually grow underneath the ground. So right underneath the plant into the soil, and they're usually long and spindly and covered in hairs, and that's what really holds the plant down. So they stop the plant being blown away or moving or someone disturbing it, but they also absorb water. They take in water and nutrients from the soil to help the plant grow. So it's like getting it plant food. They get their plant food, we eat to get our food. They actually absorb it through the roots. So that's why the roots are really important. Now the stem or trunk is the long woody bit that holds the thing in place. And it has to be really strong because it's got to stop the plant. It's got to hold the plant up. And if there's a flower on it, it needs to hold the flower up so that it stays strong. So that's called the stem. And if you think every kind of plant has some kind of stem, so if you think about the trees, the trunk, the big trunk is the stem of the plant. If you look at a little plant like a dandelion, the long thin bit is actually the stem, and it holds it strong and stops it falling over. Now the leaves are really important. The long flat green leaves, they don't have to be green. I've got plants with red leaves and yellow leaves, but the leaves have a really, really important job. The leaves use the sunlight, taking the sunlight and the carbon dioxide from the air to help the plant grow and develop. So it's really important. The leaves have a really important job, and they grow in some plants. They fall off in the winter because the plant needs to conserve its energy when it's not as sunny. In other plants, they stay all year round, but their job is to take in the sunlight and the carbon dioxide and convert it and use that to make the plant healthy. Now, finally, the flowers. The flowers are really bright and colourful and really beautiful, but of course, they're not really designed to attract us humans, although we like them. They're really designed to attract insects and birds and bees and those kinds of creatures. And the idea is that these insects go into the flower to try and catch the pollen, to try and get the stuff out of the pollen, and they get themselves covered in pollen. Then they move to the next plant and next flower, etc., and that will help the flowers to grow. So it's about reproduction. So they move the male bits of one flower into another flower, and they brush it against the female bits, and that's where you get new flowers from, and seeds that actually work. So the flowers have a really important job. Now, looking at these 4 pictures, we've just been through it. Pause this video and talk to someone, see what you remember about the names of each of the 4 bits of a flower, a plant, and exactly what they do. So pause the video and talk to someone and see what you can remember. Welcome back. Right, your task now is to see what you've learned about these. So what I want you to do is, I want you to get a piece of paper like this, fold it into 4 parts. You can either fold it like that and then like that, doesn't really matter. So you end up with 4 parts. When you've got your 4 parts, I want you to draw a picture of it like this. So at the top you've got the flower, the middle you've got the leaves, this bit is the stem or trunk, and then this bit is the roots. And then I want you to write a sentence describing each of what these things do. So see what you can remember, very simple words to say what each part of the plant actually does. So when you've done that, you can photograph it and stick it on tapestry. And that is your first lesson on plants for this term. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you back at school soon. Bye.